You know, every single thought you have, every memory you make, every little movement, it all comes down to these tiny, super fast signals firing between your brain cells. And you know what? Most of those signals start with one simple command: go. Today, we're going to get to know the molecule behind that command, the brain's #1 accelerator.
So what is this master on switch? I mean, if you think about your brain as this incredibly powerful engine, what's the one thing that's always flooring the gas pedal? Well, the answer is this super common little amino acid called glutamate. And honestly, understanding how it works is one of the biggest keys to understanding the brain itself.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with glutamate, the go signal itself. Then we'll meet its docking stations, the receptors. From there, we'll zoom in on the really fast ones, tell a story about two key players, and uncover how one of them acts like a coincidence detector. And finally, we'll wrap it all up by looking at why this tiny, microscopic dance matters so much for everything from memory to medicine.
All right, let's get right to it and meet our main character. Your brain uses a ton of different chemical messengers, right? But one of them is the undisputed king when it comes to getting things started. And that is glutamate. It is, by a huge margin, the most common excitatory neurotransmitter in your entire central nervous system. Now, excitatory just means it gets neurons all revved up and makes them way more likely to fire off a signal. If you've heard of GABA as the brain's brake pedal, well, glutamate is the accelerator. It's behind almost all of the fast, information-rich signaling happening in your head right now. What's really cool is just how efficient the brain is with this stuff. It doesn't just use glutamate once and toss it. No way. It has this really elegant recycling program. So a neuron releases glutamate, it's then immediately scooped up by these neighboring support cells called glia. The glia turn it into a safe, inactive version, glutamine, and then hand it right back to the neuron. The neuron then turns it back into glutamate, ready to go again. It's a perfect closed-loop system. Okay, so glutamate is the message, but how does that message actually get received? Well, it needs a specific place to land, kind of like a docking station on the next neuron. These are the glutamate receptors, and they come in two main flavors. On one side, you've got the super fast-acting ion channels. Think of these like a doorbell. Glutamate pushes the button, and bam, a gate instantly opens, letting ions rush in. It's direct, it's simple, it's incredibly fast. Then, on the other side, you've got these slower, G-protein-coupled receptors. These are more like sending a memo that kicks off a whole chain of events inside the cell. For this explainer, we're going to focus on the fast ones, the doorbells. All right, let's zoom in on these fast ion channels, because this is where all the high-speed communication in the brain really happens. Within this family, there are three main types you'll always hear about: AMPA, kainate, and NMDA. Now, the names are a little weird, I know. They're actually named after specific lab-made chemicals or agonists that are really good at activating them and only them. And this is a huge deal for scientists because it lets them poke just one type of receptor at a time. By using these selective agonists and the antagonists that block them, we can pick them apart and figure out exactly what each one does. Now, this is where the story gets really good. At most of these excitatory connections, you don't just find one type of receptor. You usually find two of them, AMPA and NMDA, sitting right next to each other, working as a team. And their partnership creates a signal that's way more complex and interesting than either one could make on its own. So what does that team signal actually look like? Well, here it is. This graph shows the electrical current flowing into a neuron the instant glutamate shows up. Just look at the shape. See that really fast, sharp spike right at the beginning? But then, notice how it's followed by this much slower, longer-lasting tail. That unique shape is our first big clue that two totally different things are happening at the same time. And this is where those special drugs we were just talking about become our superpowers. We can use them to basically do surgery on this signal and see exactly which receptor is making which part of the curve. And here's what we find. Check it out. On the left, if we use a drug to block all the NMDA receptors, all that's left is the AMPA signal. And look at it. It's incredibly fast on and just as fast off. That's our initial powerful burst. Now, on the right, we do the opposite. We block the AMPA receptors, and we finally see what the NMDA signal is doing all by itself. It's way slower to get going, but it provides this sustained, long-lasting hum in the background. But this whole thing uncovers a huge mystery. If you plot the electricity flowing through these channels at different voltages, the AMPA receptor is simple. It's a straight line. More voltage, more current. But just look at the NMDA receptor. At a neuron's normal resting voltage, down here at the bottom, almost nothing gets through, even when glutamate is right there. It's like the key is in the lock, but the door is completely jammed shut. So what's jamming it? Well, it turns out this weird behavior isn't a bug, it's a feature. In fact, it's the NMDA receptor's most incredible feature. It allows it to act like a tiny computer, a coincidence detector that is absolutely essential for how we learn. So what is it that's jamming that channel? And more importantly, how does it get unjammed? The answer to that is the secret to its incredible power. It all comes down to a two-key lock system. The first key is just glutamate binding to the outside. Simple enough. But that's not enough to open the door, because the channel is physically plugged by a magnesium ion. The second key is electrical. The neuron has to already be active or depolarized from a bunch of other inputs. It's that positive electrical charge that physically boots the magnesium plug out of the way. Only when both things happen at the same time, glutamate is there and the neuron is active, can the channel finally open. And here's what that actually looks like. On the left, a single, weak signal comes in. The AMPA receptors fire, sure, creating a little blip of activity, but it's not nearly enough to pop that magnesium plug. So the NMDA receptor just sits there, silent. But now look at the right. When multiple signals arrive together, in coincidence, their combined power is finally enough to energize the cell and kick out that plug. Now the NMDA channel opens, letting in this rush of calcium that strengthens the connection for the future. This is it. This is the molecular basis for that famous saying, neurons that fire together, wire together. So this incredibly detailed dance between AMPA and NMDA receptors, it isn't just some cool, obscure piece of biology. It has massive consequences for pretty much everything the brain does. I mean, this system is fundamental to who we are. Its ability to detect coincidence is the bedrock of synaptic plasticity. It's literally how we learn things and form new memories. It's also critical for wiring up the brain correctly in the first place. But all this power has a downside. Too much glutamate can actually be toxic, overexciting neurons to death. We see this in things like stroke or epilepsy. And when this delicate balance is just a little bit off, it's being linked more and more to mental health conditions, from anxiety to addiction. So, understanding the brain's accelerator is a huge piece of the puzzle. It shows us how activity gets started, gets amplified, and gets recorded. But, obviously, an engine with no brakes is just a recipe for disaster. Which leaves us with one final and really important question. If glutamate is constantly shouting go, what's the equally powerful system in the brain that's responsible for saying stop?